Okay, this is a video of the 6.2 solutions to the homework. So let's start with number 1. We can leave these as 2 square roots and break it down this way, or we could combine them and put them under 1, but we know 8 breaks down into 2 and 4, 32 breaks down into 2 and 16, and again there's many ways that you can do these problems, but if you do it right, you'll end up with the same answer. So 32 could also break down into 4 and 8. So we could do it whatever way we want. So we have 2, 2, and 2. And then we have 2, 4, and 4. Now, here is when we would want to put it all under 1 square root. And since they have the same index out front, which would be 2, we can combine them. So we have 4 2's and 2 4's, which we could break down the 4's even more, but we don't have to because we have a pair of them that we can circle. But if we wanted to break it down into 2, 2, 2, and 2, we could, and we'd end up with the same answer. So we're going to circle all of our pairs now. So we have a pair of 2's, another pair of 2's, and a pair of 4's. So we're going to take out a 2, and a 4, and we're left with nothing that has no pair, so we don't have anything on the inside. So we're just going to multiply 2 times 4, which gives us 16. So we can multiply the 2's first, we get 4, and then 4 times 4 is 16. So our final answer here is 16. Now number 2. So we can't combine these together because they have different indexes. So we have an index of 4 and an index of 3. So we can't combine them, but we can still break it down and simplify. So 8 breaks down into 2, 2, and 2. But when our index is 4, we need to circle 4 numbers in order to take them out, and we don't have 4 numbers here to take out. So we can't simplify this 8. So the first number, we're just going to leave it as the 4th root of 8. That cannot be broken down anymore. But now let's try our second one. We have the cubed root of 32. So we can break this down into 2 and 16. Then we're left with 2. 16 breaks down into 2 and 8. Now we have 2 2's, 8 breaks down into 2 and 4. And 4 breaks down into 2 and 2. So since our index is 3, we need to be circling groups of 3 numbers. So we have 3 2's that we can circle, but we're left with 2 2's on the inside. So this breaks down, we can take a 2 out, but then we're still left with the cube's root of, and we just multiply what's left on the inside. So we have 2 2's left on the inside that we can't take out, so we multiply those together. So on the inside, we're going to be left with 4. So our final answer is the 4th root of 8 times 2 times the cubed root of 4. So this one, all we ended up doing was breaking down this cubed root of 32 into this part, and then we just left the first part the same. So let's go to number 3. So here we can combine them. So we have the cubed root, so since their indexes are the same, we can combine them, of 9 times negative 24. Now here we don't have to multiply the 9 times negative 24 because we're going to end up finding the factors of them anyways, so we can just leave it unmultiplied. So 9 breaks down into 3 and 3, and 24 breaks down into 2 and 12. So we have 3 times 3 times 2 times 12 breaks down into 3 and 4. So 3 times 3 times 2 times 3 times 2 times 2. So now we're going to group our numbers together. And remember, we're circling 3 numbers in each group since our index is 3. So we have 3 3s that we're going to circle, and we have 3 2s that we're going to circle. So we're going to take out a 3 and we're going to take out a 2. So in the end, we're just going to multiply 3 times 2, which gives us 6. Now, if we have an odd index and a negative on the inside, our answer is going to end up being negative. So our answer is negative 6. So it's only when we have a negative on the inside and an odd number of our index. But we know that if we had an even index, so let's say we had the square root of negative 2, this is just an example, we can't do this without taking this out and making it an I. So remember, only works when you have an odd index. So when it's odd, your answer is just going to be negative when you have a negative on the inside. So now let's look at number 4. So here we have the same indexes, so we can combine them. So we're going to have the cubed root of 4 times 16. We could break down the 4 into 2 and 2, or we could just leave it as 4, and 16 breaks down into 4 and 4. And now we already have our group of 3 that we can circle, so we're just going to take out a 4, and that's our final answer. If we wanted to, so I'm just going to show you a different way of doing it here. We have the cubed root of 4 times 16. We could break down the 4 into 2 and 2. The 16 breaks down into 4 and 4. And then we have 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. And now we're just going to circle our groups of 3s because our index tells us we have to circle 3 at a time. And we're going to have 2 groups of 2. So we're going to take out 2 2s, and 2 times 2 is 4. So either way you do this, you're going to end up with the same answer. Okay, let's go to number 5. Again, we have the same index, so we can combine them. So we have the cubed root of negative 5 times negative 25. But we know a negative times a negative becomes a positive, so we can just erase these negative signs here because now we're dealing with a positive number. 5 doesn't break down, so we just leave it as 5. And 25 breaks down into 5 times 5. We know we're going to circle groups of 3 here, so we circle all 3 of them, and just a 5 comes on the outside. So our answer is just 5 here. Number 6. We have the same index, so we can combine them. So we have 50 times 75. 50, we can break it down into different things, 5 and 10, but I'm going to break it down into 2 and 25, and 75 breaks down into 3 and 25. Now if we wanted to stop here, we can because we have our pair of 25s that we're going to circle and take out, but we could break them down further. So let's have our 2, 25 breaks down into 5 and 5. We have our 3, and then another 5 and 5. So now we're going to circle our pairs. So since we don't have a number out here, it implies that it's a 2, so we're circling pairs of 2s. So we have our 2 5s and our 2 5s. So we're going to take out a 5 times 5, and on the inside, we are left with the square root of 2 times 3, because those 2 don't have a pair, so we have to keep them on the inside. So on the outside, we're just going to multiply 5 times 5, which gives us 25. And on the inside, we have 2 times 3, which is 6. So our final answer is 25 square root 6. Okay, so this was the first page. So let's go ahead and go to the second. take a look at number 7. So this 3 on the outside says that we're going to circle groups of 3, but we need to break down everything on the inside as much as possible. So we have 32 that we can break down into 4 and 8. We could break it down into 2 and 16. It doesn't matter. We'll end up with the same answer. And then we have 5 A's. So we can say A times A times A times A times A. Now our 4 breaks down into 2 and 2. Our 8 breaks down into 2 and 4, but it also just breaks down into 3 2's. So if we said 2 and 4, the 4 would then break down into 2 2's. But I'm just going to skip that step. And then we have 5 A's. So A times A times A times A times A. Now we're going to circle our groups of 3. So we have 3 2's there. We only have 2 there, so we can't circle any more 2's. But we can circle the 3 A's. And then we don't have 3 there, so we can't circle any there. So we're going to take out the ones we circle. So we have 2 that comes out and A that comes out. So then on the inside, we're still left with 2 times 2 times A times A. So we have 2A on the outside. Remember, we have to keep this same index there. And then on the inside, we're just going to multiply our numbers. So we have 2 times 2, which is 4, and then we multiply our variables, A times A, which just gives us A squared. So our final answer is 2A, the cubed root of 4A squared. Let's go to number 8. So this tells us we need to circle 5 things. And since our 5 is an odd number and we have a negative on the inside, we know our answer is going to be negative. So just a little side note, our answer needs to be negative. So we can break down 32 into 2 and 16. I'm just going to leave the x to the 6 and y to the 7 there for now until I break down all the numbers. So we have 2 times 4 times 4, x to the 6, y to the 7. And then we have 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. And then we have 6 x's and 7 y's. Y, y. So now we're going to circle our groups of 5. So we have 5 2's that we can circle and pull out. We're going to circle 5 x's. And then we're going to circle 5 y's. So on the inside, we're left with an x and 2 y's. So on the inside, we have an x times y times y. So now we just need to multiply everything together. So we have 2xy on the outside, then on the inside, we need to keep this index the same. So since our index is 5, our answer needs to have that same index as 5. And then we just multiply x, and then we have 2 y's, so it becomes a y squared. So our final answer is 2xy, and then the 5th root of xy squared. Okay, let's go on to 9. So we have the cubed root of 81x cubed. So we are going to take the cubed root. 81 breaks down into 9 and 9. And we have x cubed, which we could write it as 3x's, but I'm just going to wait to write it as 3x's at the end. And then 9 breaks down into 3 and 3. And this 9 breaks down into 3 and 3. And now I'm going to write the 3x's. So the cubed root, our index of 3 out here, means that we're going to circle 3 numbers at a time. So we have 3 3s that we're going to circle and 3 x's. So what comes out is a 3 and an x, and what stays on the inside is what did not get circled, so just the 3 all by itself. Remember, we have to keep the index the same for our square root. So this cubed root with the 3 outside always stays attached. Let's go to 10. So again, we have the cubed root of 54y to the 10. So 54 breaks down into 9 and 6. And then we have y to the 10. 9 breaks down into 3 and 3. 6 breaks down into 3 and 2. And then we have 10 y's, which we can write all 10 y's now, or we know this is going to be y 10 over 3, which we'll get to that after we break down the first part, or simplify the first part. So we have the cubed root. We're going to circle all of our pairs of 3, so we circle all 3 of these 3's. So the 3 is going to come on the outside, and whatever's left is going to stay on the inside. So we have the 2. So we just broke down the 54 part, and now we have the y to the 10, which you could write y 10 times if we wanted to, or we could just leave it like this because we know it's going to be a fraction, and we can see how many times 3 goes into 10, which we know 3 goes into 10 3 times. So we have y cubed, and then whatever is left is going to stay on the inside. So 3 goes into 10 3 times with 1 left over. So we're going to have 1y left over, which again, if it was easier for you to just write all 10 y's out, you definitely can do that and then just circle the groups of 3 and you'd be left with 1y at the end. But in order to save time, you can just do it this way. So whatever we have on the outside, we're going to write on the outside, and then whatever's on the inside can stay on the inside together. So we have 3 that came out and y cubed that came out, and then again we have the cubed root, and on the inside we still have this 2 and y, so we're just going to leave it 2y on the inside. So this is our final answer. Now let's go to number 11. So we have the 4th root of 64 x cubed y to the 6. So I'm going to take the 4th root of 64. So 64 breaks down into 8 and 8. And then we have x cubed y to the 6. And again, we can break this down even more. So we have 8 breaks down into 2 and 4, and 2 and 4. We have x cubed y to the 6. And now we're going to break down the 4's. So we have 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. X cubed y to the 6, which now I'll write them all out. So we have x times x times x, and y times y times y times y 6 times. Okay, so now this 4 tells us that we need to circle groups of 4. So we're going to circle 4 2's at a time here. We don't have 4 more 2's to circle, so we're just going to leave those. We don't have 4 x's that we can circle, but we do have 4 y's. So we're going to circle 4 y's. So whatever we circled comes out. So we have a 2 on the outside and a y. And then whatever we did not circle stays on the inside. So we have 2 times 2 times x times x times x times y times y. Now we have to simplify the inside. So we have 2y to the 4th root. 2 times 2 is 4. 3 x's, we have x cubed, and 2 y's, we have y squared. So this here is our final answer. Okay, this was number 11, so let's go to 12 on the next page. Okay, we have the cubed root of 6 and the cubed root of 16. So these have the same index, so we can break it apart. So we have 2 times 3, and 16 breaks down into 4 and 4. Again, if you wanted to break 16 down into 2 and 8, you can. You'll get the same answer. So we have our index of 3. We have 2 times 3 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. And we're going to circle groups of 3 now, because our index is 3. So we have 3 2's we can circle there. And we don't have any more groups of 3 to circle. So on the outside, we can take out a 2, and on the inside, we're left with the cubed root of 2 times 3 times 2, which we can multiply all those together. We have 2 times 3, which is 6, and 6 times 2, which is 12. So we're left with 2 to the cubed root of 12. Okay, let's go to 13. So we have 2 times the cubed root of 2xy squared and the cubed root of 4x squared y to the 5th. So this 2 on the outside just stays there because that's our coefficient. And then we're going to have the cubed root, and I'm going to combine the insides together. But I'm going to break the numbers down. So 2 is just a 2. 4 breaks down into 2 and 2. So I got these 2 from the 4. And then we have an x and 2 y's in the first one. And then we have 2 x's from the second one. So these 2 x's came from there. These x's and y's came from here. And then we have 5 y's. So y times y times y times y times y. So we're going to circle groups of 3 because our index is 3. So we're going to circle all 3 2's. We are going to circle 3 x's. So we have 3 x's right there. And then groups of 3 for the y's. So we have 3 y's. And then we have 2 y's there and 1 there that we need in our circle. So we're going to take everything we circled out. We already have a 2 on the outside that we just keep on the outside. Now we bring the other 2 out also. We bring our x out. And we have 2 groups of y's, so we have 2 y's on the outside. And then on the inside, we keep whatever doesn't have a pair, so we just have this lonely y here that doesn't have a pair, so that's just going to stay on the inside. And then we need to keep our index of 3 the same. And now we can multiply everything on the outside together and everything on the inside together. So we have 2 times 2, which gives us 4. X by itself, y times y is y squared, and the cubed root of y is on the inside. Okay, 14. Okay, so we have 2 radicals with the same index, so we can combine them. I'm going to break this down into 2 times 2 times 2, because we know it breaks down to 2 and 4 breaks down to 2 and 2. And then we have 5 y's, which I'm going to write that at the end. So I'm just going to break down the 40 now. So the 4 breaks down into 4 times 10. And then we have 5 y's and 2 y's. So I'm just going to write them all down. So in total, we have 7 y's. So we have y times y times y times y times y. So that's our first 5, and then we have 2 more. Okay. So now I need to break down the 4 and the 10. So we have 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 5. And then we have 7 y's, which I'm not going to rewrite them, but we can just look at it here. Since we don't have a number out here, that implies that our index is 2. So we're going to circle all pairs of 2. So we have 2, 2, and 2. And then we're going to circle all pairs of 2's for our y's. So 2, 2, and 2. So on the outside, we're going to take out 3 2's from each one of these circles. And then we're going to take out 3 y's from each one of these circles. And then on the inside, we are left with just a y, just a 5, and a y. And now we're going to multiply everything on the outside. So we have 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. Y times y times y, which is y cubed, square root of 5y. Okay, number 15. Since we are multiplying these two and they have the same indexes, we can multiply our coefficients together first. So we have 6, so I just multiplied the 3 and the 2 that are on the outside. And then we have the cubed root of 5y cubed times 50y to the 4th. So we have a 6 on the outside, we have a cubed root, and we have 5 times this we can break down into 2 and 25. We could also break it down to 5 and 50. Again, you'll get the same answer. And then we have 7 y's total. So I'm just going to leave it y to the 7. So we have 6, the cubed root of 5 times 2 times 5 times 5 times y to the 7. We have 6. And now I can just circle our pairs here. And this y, I'm going to rewrite on the side. So I'm going to take it out from under the radical and make it a y to the 7 over 3. So remember, our index goes on the bottom of the fraction. So instead of writing 7 y's again, I'm just going to do it the shorter way. So we have a 6 on the outside. We're going to circle all groups of 3. So we have 5 3's that I'm going to circle. So 5 comes out on the outside, and a 2 is left on the inside. So now with the y's, 3 goes into 7 2 times. So we have y squared that comes out, and on the inside, we're just left with 1y. So I'm going to take all of our stuff on the outside and put it together. So 6 times 5 is 30, and then we have a y squared, and on the inside, we have a 2y, but remember we need to keep our index the same, so that has to be a 3 on the outside of the square root. Right, 16, almost done. So we have the same coefficients, so we can combine them. So we have 3. And the 4th root, I'm going to break down 18 into 9 and 2. And 6 I can break down into 2 and 3. And then I have, in total, I have 9 A's here and 1 A here. So I'm going to have 10 A's and 2 B's. So I have this 3 on the outside, and our index is 4. 9 breaks down into 3 and 3. Then we have 2 times 2 times 3. And we have 10 A's and 2 B's. So I'm going to write, again, instead of writing 10 A's out, I'm going to do A to the 10 over our index, which is 4. So since our index is 4, the 4 goes on the bottom of the fraction there. And then I can write the B 2 over 4. 4 goes into 10 twice with 2 left over. So on the outside, so we already have a 3 on the outside. Since 4 goes into 10 twice, we're going to have 2 A's that come on the outside. We have 2 left over, so those 2 A's are going to stay on the inside. So we have 2 A's that stay on the inside. and 4 does not go into 2 at all, so we're still going to be left with 2 b's on the inside. And with our numbers, we don't have any groups of 4 here, any 4 of the same kind, so we can't circle anything. So we're just going to need to multiply them all back together. So we have 3 times 3, which is 9, 2 times 2, which is 4, so we have 9 times 4 times 3. 9 times 4 is 36, and 36 times 3 is 108. We also know that we didn't take out any numbers from the beginning, so we could just multiply 18 times 6 and get that same 108 back. So we just could multiply the 2 original numbers because we weren't able to break them down and take anything out. So we're still left with those 2 being multiplied on the inside. And then we can't forget about our coefficient, our index being 4. So this is going to be our final answer. So here, the only thing we did was combine the 2, and we could only take out 2 a's. So we went from having 10 a's to only 2 on the inside. Okay, let's go to 17, next page. So here we're dividing. So since we have the same index, we can just write it all under the same square root. So we have 500 divided by 5. So now we just divide 500 by 5, which we get 100. So we have the square root of 100. We know 100 breaks down into 10 and 10. So we circle our pair, and the square root of 100 is 10. 18. We have the same index here, so we can write them all under one big radical. So we have 48x cubed y squared on top, and 6x to the 4th and y on the bottom. So now we're going to cancel out as much as we can. So 6 goes into 48 8 times. 48 divided by 6 is 8, so we're left with 8 as our numbers. Next, we're going to move on to the x's. So if we have 3 x's on the top and 4 x's on the bottom, 3 of them are going to cancel out, and we're just left with 1 x on the bottom. So on the bottom, we're left with just 1 x. And we're going to do the same thing for the y's. If we have 2 y's on the top and 1 y on the bottom, we're going to be left with 1 y on top. So now we need to separate them again. So we have 8y, the cubed root of 8y, and the cubed root of x. We can break down the top as much as possible, so we know that 8 breaks down into 2 times 2 times 2, and then we're just left with 1y. And on the bottom, we just have the cubed root of x. So on the top, we can circle all of our pairs of 3. So we have 3 of a kind here, which we're going to take out the 2. And then we have the cubed root of y on top and the cubed root of x on the bottom, which if we wanted to, we could rewrite this as 2, make it just one radical, and y over x on the inside. So this is just 2 different ways of writing the same thing. You could write it this way, or you could write it this way. Either way is right. Okay, last problem. Thank goodness. So we have the same index out here. Remember, when we don't have a number, it's implied that it's a 2. So we have a 2 and a 2 for our index. So we can do the square root of 48x cubed on top and 3xy squared on the bottom. We're going to simplify our numbers. So 3 goes into 48 16 times. So on top, we're going to have 16. We have 3 x's on top and 1 on the bottom, so we're just going to be left with 2 x's on top, because remember, x times x on top, and just 1 x on the bottom. These cancel out, so we're left with 2 on top. And y's, we only have 2 on the bottom, so we're still stuck with 2 on the bottom. We can separate this if we wanted to, so we have 16x squared on top and y square root of y squared on the bottom, and we're just going to treat this as 2 separate problems. So we're going to do the top. So we have the square root. 16 breaks down into 4 times 4, and x squared breaks down into x times x. We can circle our pairs. We have a pair of 4's and a pair of x's, so a 4 comes out and an x comes out. We're going to do the same thing on the bottom, so we have y times y. So here we're just treating it as 2 separate problems. We're going to do the top and the bottom separately. We circle our pair of y's, a y comes out. So our final answer is 4x over y. Alright, so this was all of the homework.